Title: The regretful ex-wife pleads with her hurt husband for forgiveness. He stood up and walked out. I pleaded for him to stay, but he ignored me and I fell asleep in tears. Did I ever consider being unfaithful? Absolutely not. Did I have chances? Many. So when I received that email saying my husband was about to become a father, it hit me hard. Hello friends. We are back with another story today. You've already seen the title, so let's get started. So, here's my post on Reddit's support for those who've strayed. I wish for the old him back, the one I transformed into a stranger. I hope to restore him to the man he used to be. This will be a lengthy post, but it's a way for me to vent and seek advice from others who've faced similar situations in saving their marriages. It's been 7 months since my husband found out about my infidelity. We are both 39, and before the revelation, he was so sweet. He wasn't perfect, but I was his entire world. Our family was his everything. He worked long hours so I could stay home with our son and daughter, and he always did little things to brighten my day. My husband was completely different before. He was often rude, charming, and a bit of a troublemaker. He used to get into fights and had numerous girlfriends, but somehow, the summer before our senior year, he began to show interest in me. I was the shy girl who loved video games, comic books, and cosplay. Since he moved to our town in 8th grade, he was always nice to me, which stood out. I was invited to my first party because of him, where he even taught me how to dance salsa. Just when I thought he'd forget about me after joining the popular crowd, he came back to the comic shop where I worked that summer. We started hanging out regularly and eventually began dating by summer's end. I had the best senior year ever, being part of the popular crowd and attending countless parties. Yet, my favorite moments were those spent alone with him. I never slacked off, I studied hard and made sure he did too. We both got accepted into the same college and married shortly after graduating. A year and a half later, our son was born, followed by our daughter 20 months later. During this time, my husband worked tirelessly for us. He struggled to find a job due to his lack of experience, so he took odd jobs: construction, grave digging, janitorial work, and even as a receptionist until he finally landed a position as a computer technician. During this period, he gained quite a bit of weight, but it didn't affect his desire for intimacy. Meanwhile, I maintained my figure, and soon we looked like a cartoon couple, a muscular, heavier husband with a fit wife. We even dressed as Barney and Betty Rubble for Halloween, playing into the cliché. It wasn't that he didn't try to work out, he just had a tough time shedding the extra weight. My desire for intimacy, however, began to wane. It wasn't that I didn't want to, I just wasn't in the mood, and as time passed, my enthusiasm for physical intimacy faded. I was constantly exhausted. The kids took a toll on me, and even though he helped with laundry and cooking, I still felt drained. Saturdays became takeout nights and Sundays were his cooking days. Despite my love for him, I often found myself saying no more than yes when it came to intimacy. This affected his mood, and when he didn't get what he wanted, he'd lash out and complain. It became a frustrating cycle, as I would be sore for days afterward, but he still expected more. He'd ask me to dress up for him, but I lost interest in that as well, even though he had no problem wearing the costumes I made for conventions. Our lack of intimacy became a significant issue. We even went to couples counseling, where the counselor suggested he might be a borderline sex addict, but he only wanted to be intimate with me. I had myself checked out, and it turned out I had low estrogen, which led to various medications that didn't help. My affair was not premeditated, romantic, or grand. I was out with friends from church, also married, bowling and having fun. It was our first gathering since lockdown and we had a blast. After the game, instead of heading home, I waited in the lounge for my bus and met my affair partner. He was in his early 20s and noticed I was reading manga on my phone. We struck up a conversation. I wish I could blame it on alcohol, but I was only buzzed. I wished it were due to loneliness, but my husband always showered me with attention. Our marriage was happy, or so I thought. I still can't explain why I did it. We talked for hours, flirting back and forth. When he walked me to my car, he kissed me, and instead of pushing him away, I kissed him back. We ended up being intimate in a nearby motel, but I quickly regretted it. Halfway through, I realized what I was doing, pushed him off, apologized, got dressed, and left. When I returned home, my husband was asleep on the couch with the kids. I took a shower and cried, telling myself it was a mistake that would never happen again. After my shower, I joined them on the couch, curled into a ball, and cried myself to sleep. The next day, I wanted to confess, but fear held me back, so I pretended it never happened. For 5 weeks, I kept it hidden until I realized I was late. Panic set in. I took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. I was in shock because my husband had a vasectomy, and I had ensured my affair partner wore a condom that night. I visited the doctor, and to my dismay, I confirmed the pregnancy. It was an awkward conversation. We concluded that my affair partner must have removed the condom without my knowledge. Terrified, I scheduled an appointment to terminate the pregnancy. I couldn't bear to tell my husband. I aimed to keep this secret forever. Upon arriving home, I was a wreck, trying to compose myself when my husband unexpectedly came home early. I forced a smile, but his expression was filled with anger. His health insurance provider had emailed him regarding a new claim, asking who the father was. Overwhelmed with tears, I repeated my story, insisting it was a one-time mistake, but he didn't believe me. His voice rose as he demanded details about the affair, how it happened, and what my lover looked like, using harsh language before storming out. I cried and called my sister to take the kids because I needed to be alone. When my husband returned after midnight, I gasped at the sight of him. He had a black eye, a blood-stained shirt, and bruised fists. I asked if he was all right, but he shoved me and said the blood wasn't his before retreating to the bathroom, slamming the door. I waited by the stairs for him to emerge, and when he did, he sneered at me before heading to the living room. I attempted to talk to him, but he ignored me. Eventually, he looked at me and asked, "Who do you think I fought?" I turned pale, realizing what he meant. He had gone to the bowling alley looking for my affair partner, and they had brawled. It was a daily occurrence in our town. Unless someone was seriously harmed, the sheriff rarely intervened. He kicked me out of our bedroom and onto the sofa. I tried sneaking back into the bed twice. The first time he yelled at me to leave, the second time he shoved me off. I sat on the floor, no words exchanged, and returned to the sofa crying. On the day of my appointment for the procedure, he coldly told me to go through with it. I was scared to face it alone. Afterward, I returned home to find my husband and his friends unloading our garage. When I asked what was happening, he snapped that it was none of my business. His friends looked shocked, and I went inside, feeling the weight of the situation. Later, I heard a lot of hammering and went to check on him. He was converting the garage into an apartment. I tried to apologize, but he refused to engage. One day, I exploded with apologies, which only infuriated him further. He said he wouldn't waste his energy on me and would divorce me if he had his way. The first month was awkward, trying to explain to our kids what was happening. I invited him to dinner, but he ignored me, focusing solely on the kids. By the second month, I begged him to go to counseling, and he reluctantly agreed. However, he remained silent during sessions, only to lash out at me about my cheating. Then came the gut punch. I discovered he had been seeing other women. At first, I thought he was lying to hurt me, but the look on his face told me otherwise. When the counselor asked how many, he admitted to not keeping count but had been hooking up with random women almost every other day for the past few weeks to feel desired. When the counselor reminded him that 2 wrongs don't make a right, he shot back that it wasn't 2 wrongs. I was the one who broke our vows and lied, while he was merely adjusting to our new reality. I was hurt, but I saw this as a chance to win him back. As the following month rolled in, he started talking to various women right in front of me. That was it. I told him I wanted a divorce. He laughed, taunting me to go ahead, promising to tell everyone what happened, screaming it from the rooftops, posting it on our family's Facebook page, and including it in our holiday newsletters. That silenced me instantly. He ordered me to leave, and we ended up in a heated argument. It felt good to provoke some emotion from him. Somehow, we ended up being intimate that night, and I thought we were healing, but afterward, he kicked me out, claiming I had overstayed my welcome. I was shocked by his words, but I left. For months now, this has been the pattern, occasional hookups followed by being kicked out immediately. He continues seeing other women, and our communication has dwindled, especially during counseling. We aren't healing. In one session, he told the counselor he felt broken, that when he looked at me, it reminded him of years wasted. I asked if there was a chance for us to start over, but he simply said once the kids were old enough for him to avoid child support, he would divorce me and walked out. If he's so determined to leave, why attend counseling weekly? I can't shake the feeling he says these things to hurt me. Our anniversary recently passed, and the family threw us a party. He played the part of a loving husband, and I loathed myself for what I had done. I missed how things used to be, how he would hold my hand and kiss my cheek at the party. When we got home, he tucked the kids in and tried to initiate intimacy again. We ended up together, but once it was over, he left. I begged him to stay, but he brushed me off, leaving me in tears. I need help. I want my husband back. I want our life restored. Is there anyone out there who has been through something similar and can offer advice on mending this marriage? Please help me. Ma'am, you cheated on a savage. Now, everyone loves a story like this, right? While it would be ideal for him to divorce her and move on, consider the situation. He was betrayed, mistreated, and ultimately became the victim here. If he goes through with a divorce, he'll still face consequences. I decided to check her post history and saw that her husband had started using her account. Recently, he shared his side of the story. Let's take a look at it. Am I a monster? Yes, I'm using my possibly ex-wife's account to share my perspective. It's interesting because I was drawn to her when we were in school. I admired how she came to class dressed in her handmade outfits. I enjoyed our conversations about anime and comic characters. It wasn't my thing, but her passion lit up her face, and that made me happy. I learned about her condition in the 90s when the internet was more accessible. I spent time at the library to better understand her situation because I loved her. To me, she was worth it. We married a month after graduation, and she even wanted a cosplay-themed wedding. In our relationship, physical intimacy was sporadic, sometimes just once a month or not at all. Her mood swings and obsessions with manga often took precedence over our connection. I desired more children, but out of fear of passing on her autism spectrum disorder (ASD) to them, I had a vasectomy. At the time of the affair, I weighed 250 pounds and had lost confidence in myself. My wife was everything to me, she consumed my thoughts. I didn't seek gratification elsewhere because I only wanted her. The absence of physical intimacy was a significant issue. Oral intimacy became non-existent. There were times I would try to initiate things, but I was often turned down. One day, I took a day off to spend time with her, hoping for intimacy, but she denied me. She never initiated affection, and it became frustrating. I voiced my concerns multiple times and sought compromise, but her infidelity shattered my trust. I needed to know how many times she cheated, and despite her assurances that it was a one-time mistake, I couldn't help but doubt her. I found out who her affair partner was and confronted him, which felt justified at the time. Afterward, I sought legal advice and learned that due to her condition and our children, I would be stuck in this situation for a long time. After her appointment, I joined Tinder and, for the first time in years, found someone else. I felt guilty, but the validation was intoxicating. Every woman I met made me feel wanted. I continued pursuing these random encounters to regain a sense of manhood after her betrayal. The intimacy we shared afterward felt forced, like she was only doing it to mend things rather than out of genuine desire. Initially, I had my kids tested to confirm they were mine. Trust was shattered. She tried to prove her loyalty to me through counseling, but I struggled to forgive and forget. I considered leaving, but my in-laws offered support if I chose to stay. Our oldest child is 11, and the youngest just turned 10. Unless my financial situation improves, I'll remain in this house for at least another 8 years, which is a long time to harbor resentment. I can forgive, but I'll never forget. I truly wish she would leave, but I don't see a clear path forward. Ultimately, it's complicated. I need to figure out how to navigate this mess without causing further damage to our children. So what's the takeaway here? Should he pursue a divorce? What do you think about the initial post and his response? Share your thoughts in the comments, and I'll catch you at the next one.